Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast presented by Gold Boys. Coming up on the show, Jonathan Von Tobel of VSiN will join us. We will break down game 2 of the NBA Finals, a live reaction as, who knows, maybe we'll get a good game to discuss. A couple minutes to go in the first half right now, and it's tied. So maybe we'll be looking at a competitive game. Couple quick things before we get to JVT. No news yet on Hurley and the Lakers. Sounds like Monday we're going to get a decision. I was pretty confident last time I was doing the show Thursday when the story broke. Hey, $100 million, it's the Lakers. If it's gone this far, he's probably going to go to LA. I'm a little more 50-50 on it now just because, hey, I kind of feel like if it was going to happen, it might have happened already. Again, it'd be interesting if you put a betting odds on it. What's the favorite? What's the underdog? I'm wondering if any of these places put odds on them. Some of these books put odds up on this stuff, but it's like $10, $20 limits. They do it just for promotion. It's not actually betting. Boy, I think it would be a toss-up either way. Again, I just have a feeling like the fact that it hasn't been done yet. Again, I don't think they wanted to do it Sunday because it would upstage the finals. And maybe the league said, hey, if you're going to announce Hurley to the Lakers, wait till Monday. So maybe it still happens. I would say I'm like 55-45 that it does go to the Lakers just because at the end of the day, $100 million, and that's the reports. $100 million is a lot to turn down. And once you're offered that money is no longer hypothetical. That money is yours. Once it's offered, it's guaranteed once it's offered. And by turning down the offer, you're giving the money back, so to speak. So again, money's not everything. He's making decent money. He's making good money at UConn, like 5-year deal, $35 million, something like that. But that's not $100 million. So again, it's not a perfect fit. You worry about him at the NBA. It's not a great roster around LeBron and Davis. I mean, a team with LeBron and Davis, they're really not, barring some big move, and I don't know what that move would be. It's not a title team. So 55-45, I'd say he goes to Lakers, but it sounds like we will find out on Monday here. The latest on Sunday was Woj tweeting he's proud of what he built at UConn. It's a true 50-50 decision. So will be interesting. You think the least for Hurley, hey, he could drive up some money and get some more money out of UConn and get a nice little raise. Not that, not that he needed any more leverage. I mean, he won 2 championships in a row, just blowtorch everybody in the tournament. You figured he could he's already gotten all the money he could possibly get, but maybe the Lakers forces UConn to find a few more coins under the couch cushions to pay Hurley. So we'll see. We'll find out Monday. And again, slight lean, he goes to Lakers. I was much more confident on Thursday they would actually go to the Lakers. So we'll see what happens there. We'll get JVT's thoughts on that in a couple minutes. Quickly on the baseball, a couple things. Yankees-Dodgers was fun this weekend. Big home runs, all the star power. It lost a little juice with no Soto. And here the Yankees are again in their lying ways where Boone tells you Friday, no IL for Soto. He could pinch hit Friday. Soto's holding a bat Friday night. Perfect pinch hit situation. Doesn't pinch hit. And after the game, he says, you know what? He was never an option. I get that gamesmanship option of that gamesmanship aspect of it. But he tells you Friday, hey, no chance he goes on the IL. Then he tells you Saturday, oh, he might go on the IL. Who knows? So it was still a fun series. You never know with baseball if you're going to see that again in October. It'd be fun to finally get the 2 of the best teams, whether it's Yankees, Phillies, Yankees, Dodgers. It'd be fun to see that in October. The nature of the baseball playoffs now, there's so much randomness. Okay, it's fun that anybody can make it, and it's sort of March Madness. At least March Madness, how it used to be before you can get these Cinderella runs, and you can get the Diamondbacks, and you can get these teams out of nowhere. But it would be fun to just get the best versus the best. The Yankees, Dodgers would just be a lot of fun. Yankees, Phillies would be a lot of fun. So that was a fun series this weekend. A lot of stars. A lot of buzz for that series. I really enjoyed that. As Yankees look like they're a little closer to getting Cole back. Cole had his second rehab start, so keep an eye on that. And I mentioned this. Speaking of the Phillies, I mentioned this maybe a week and a half or so ago. It was after Memorial Day weekend. The Phillies are like minus 150 to win the division. I said, hey, you missed the best number, but better late than never. They are going to run away with this division. They're minus 350 to win the division now. And the Braves are still 11-1 to miss the playoffs. The Braves will probably make the playoffs, but they are not a good team. This is not the team of last year, 2 years ago. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the deadline because last time Acuna got hurt, they traded for a whole new outfield. They went for it and they won, but they were better that year than they are now. This is just not that good of a team. They don't hit. They've got a lot of these guys that you're used to hitting just having really bad years. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the deadline and what they do and what in terms of going for it because they're a good team, but they're not a powerhouse like they've been in past years. And they just lost 3 in a row to Washington. They had a 4-game series where they won the first game on Thursday, then lost 3 in a row. They lost the last game of the series to Boston. So you're playing the Red Sox, the Nationals, and you lost 4 out of 5. This is just not that good of a team. And that's with Sale pitching really well. And Sale's not a given, consider his injury history. They just, every time you look up, they're throwing a pitcher you never heard of. They're not scoring. No Strider, no Acuna. Philly's going to win that division going away. And Atlanta probably, here's the thing, Atlanta probably makes the playoffs, but they probably shouldn't be 11-1 to miss, just because all of the issues they have. It's just hard to find 3 teams to jump up and take their spot. If you look at the National League, it's a lot of teams hovering around 500. All these teams in the Central, Reds, Cubs, teams in the West, Giants, Padres. You don't think anybody in the East would catch them. So probably not 3 teams to catch the Braves, but I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. I think it was Memorial Day weekend when Acuna got hurt. I said, hey, Philly's a good bet to win this division. And who knows, Atlanta at 15-1 to miss the playoffs, worth a shot. It's still 11-1. Again, they probably get in, but I don't know that it should be 11-1. So baseball will be taking center stage here as we start to get rid of the NBA finals as that series progresses. Stanley Cup, I can't get into Florida, Edmonton. I can't. I mean, as the series goes on, maybe we'll bring out a hockey guest or bring on a guest that can do, baseball and hockey. I'd like to do some hockey. It's just, I had a mild interest in seeing the Rangers win. Dallas interested me a little bit. I can't get into Florida, Edmonton. I just can't. I'll keep an eye on it as the series goes. The hockey people say it's a good series. Both teams can score. McDavid, the whole thing with Canada, hasn't won the cup since '93. I'm having a hard time getting into it. I know Florida won the first game 3-0. They're now -250 series favorite. So try to do a spot on the hockey coming up. Maybe do some College World Series coming up. That's next weekend. The games this weekend were really fun, really exciting. So that's just a fun sport, man. The metal bats, comebacks. That's a sport that's really fun. UConn had a bad loss on Saturday. They still haven't gotten to Omaha. They had a great first weekend in the regional. They got killed by Florida State in that first best out of 2 out of 3 to Florida State, and then they lost in extra innings. A crazy game on Saturday. I was rooting for them to get to a World Series here, their first time, but that couldn't happen. But those games were a lot of fun, so maybe we'll get a college baseball guest on and preview the World Series. But coming up next, it is Jonathan Von Tobel. Game 2 is in the books. We will discuss. That is next. This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast. The Boston Celtics are 2 wins away from holding up the trophy. To discuss it, it is Jonathan Von Tobel from VSiN tonight. JVT, what's up, man? I guess I'm going to put you just on the spot here and say, make a case for Dallas and tell me why this series is not over.
Let's see. I mean, I guess Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown could get abducted by aliens at some point, and Derek White maybe just stops showing up because he doesn't feel like it, retires in the middle of the series. In all seriousness, I think the thing you start with is Kyrie Irving and the fact that Kyrie Irving just hasn't performed very well. And if Kyrie Irving shows up and gives you a nuclear Kyrie Irving performance, then I think you're going to be alive, especially when you're at home. Going 7 of 18 and scoring 16 points just isn't going to do it against this team. And I think that's probably where you start. But I will say, starting with the joke, I don't think there's many levers that they have left to pull to get back into this series, even though they're only down 2-0 with 2 go-home games coming up.
Yeah, it was one of those weird games where Boston was in control throughout, and then you're kind of, unless you're really invested, you're maybe checking out here and there, and you look up, and you're just kind of waiting for the time to expire, and it's 103-98, and then Dallas is on a fast break, about to cut it to 3 with 40 seconds left, and yes, it was a foul, and yes, if he makes 2, it's a 3-point game, but Boston still has the ball. Dallas was up to tie it. It didn't feel like a close game, and this is a case of, hey, make sure you get the best of the number because it lands right on 7. There was some 6.5, some 7, so I don't know. Boston really didn't shoot well. I think when you look up at halftime and Boston's up 3 and Tatum's 2 of 10 with 5 points and Boston's 3 of 15 from 3, and you're still ahead if you're Boston, it's got to be pretty disconcerting here if you're the Mavericks.
100%. And this is kind of been my favorite stat to track throughout these 2 games in this series. But Will, you go back to game 1, the Celtics absolutely dominated them in the paint. They were 14 of 14 at the rim. They hit all 14 of their shots within 4 feet of the basket in game 1. Today, they come back by going a paltry 20 of 27 with 2 shooting fouls drawn at the rim. They absolutely yet again dominated. And this goes back to, what they've done so well and why they're such a bad matchup for Dallas. They have 5 guys who can shoot, and so you have to bring these bigs out of the paint. You can't just plant 3 guys in the restricted area and cut the rim off from this team. And so what happens? You got 5 guys out. Well, all of a sudden, you're getting drives to the basket. You're dunking. You're getting wide open layups. Also, what they did really well here, which is why, again, going back to what's the lever you pull? I'm just not sure what it is. if you noticed, while a lot of what Drew Holiday was doing today, they were putting him in the dunker spot. They were putting a guard in the dunker spot, and then you would get guys to beat their dudes off the dribble, and then you would just get Kyrie Irving or whoever coming off of Drew Holiday sitting in the dunker spot, easy dish, layup, dunk, whatever it was. They have absolutely spaced this team out and killed them. And so to your point about, you're watching this first half, they can't hit water falling out of a boat, Boston, in terms of their 3-point shots. And yet they took a lead in the second quarter. They were leading at halftime because they have quietly dominated the best paint defense within 4 feet of the basket through 2 games.
What was your pick going into the series?
Boston in 5. I laid 1.5 games with them too.
You're in pretty good shape. So I'm guessing, I don't know, the most likely outcome is probably, you would say, Boston gets one of these 2 in Dallas, then close down 5. So you're probably on track to hit your prediction right here.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that it's probably safe to say like a gentleman's sweep is, I think, really solidly in the cards here. Win the first 3, maybe you give up the ghost in game 4 and then you get it back to Boston and that's what happens. I just think ultimately what the problem is, when you look at what you're going to do if you're going to be better if you're Dallas. The other thing that you're going to pull out of your hat is PJ Washington and Derek Jones Jr. all of a sudden become the shooters that they were, especially in that Oklahoma City series, right? Where they're just bombing away from 3, hitting at a large clip. But, if you've known Derek Jones Jr. and PJ Washington, if you just pull up a basketball reference page, that's who they are. They got outlier performances from these guys in the postseason leading up to this. Derek Jones Jr. is a career 32, 31% three-point shooter. PJ Washington's a career 34% three-point shooter. So this thought process, too, because I saw a lot of this heading into game 2, is like, well, those guys got to shoot better. It's like, well, they have to, yes, but will they is the real question because it's not really who they are. So again, going back to like why I kind of feel like this series is just in that direction outside of just these 2 wins, the things you're waiting for to happen are just, hey, we need these 34% career shooters to kind of bounce back and give us some of that magic again. And that's just not something you can realistically rely on.
What is more likely, Boston in 4 or Boston in 6?
I think more likely Boston in 4. I think that when you look at everything, how they match up with them, what they do defensively, what they're doing offensively against this Dallas team, I think it's more likely that they sweep than of course that they allow 2 losses to happen here.
Yeah, I picked Boston in 7, and after game 1, my takeaway was, first of all, that performance was concerning, alarming. I think those are the 2 words, but you always hear this. You don't want to overreact. Yeah, but as a bettor and just as a sports, whatever, you better react. You better have some sort of takeaway. And that was just such a dominant performance from Boston in game 1. It was hard to see Dallas making it to a series, after that. And I just think it's just a matter of when, not if here for Boston. Dallas is favored in game 3. Figure motivation, they're home. Shop around Dallas right around -1.5, -2. Will you have a play in game 3?
Yeah, I'll bet Boston here. I think it'll be money line. Obviously, we were just saying at like 1.5, so won't make too big of a difference. But this is one of those spots where the market loves these situations. The bettors as a whole love these situations. Team down 2-0, going back home. I made the joke up on Twitter. I was like, I can't wait for Boston to go off as like a 1-point favorite, but the Mavericks will be like 2.5-point favorites for the first half because that's just generally what you see in these games. But I think Boston, I wouldn't say no to Boston the whole way. Bet Boston now, money line. And then, of course, when we get to game time, I'm sure this could be like pick Boston -1 and then Boston first half, first quarter, because those numbers are going to have value on them. The market overvalues these situations quite a bit when you talk about these teams down 2-0 and going back home.
We've had 2 unders here. Any feel on the total, 212.5?
I actually think overbettors probably deserved a little bit of a better fate in both of these games. When you look at this game in particular, Boston in the first half just can't shoot worth a lick, as we kind of hit on. But their offense has been performing well. Like I mentioned, in the first game, you're 14-14 at the rim. You dominate in the paint. In this game, you shoot 20-27, but you can't hit a 3-point shot to save your life for the most part in this contest. I think Boston and overbettors probably deserved a little bit more here. And the pace hasn't been like really quick. In fact, today you're looking at about 91 possessions for Boston. So today was pretty slow. But I think if there is a lever, again, going back to that Dallas is going to pull, it's going to be playing a little bit quicker. You can't let this Boston defense set up. In that half court, that's going to be absolutely brutal for this team. And again, in the half court today, Boston was really successful defensively. So you pick up a little bit more pace. You get Dallas to shoot a little bit better at home. Boston continues to do what they do on offense. Feel like maybe overbettors should stick to their guns and get this thing over 212.5, one more shot in game 3.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I was betting a lot of unders, and every single game seemed to go over. Conference finals, there was a run where I
Yep.
think like every Dallas Minnesota game went over, and then I really liked the overs in these games. I just felt like I was late to the party. Not that any of those that's correlated. It's just a weird, sort of better's mindset where you're like, man, all these overs hit. Is it going to keep happening? And I don't know, just kind of evened out. Finals MVP is fascinating because Holiday
Yep.
was a dark horse for a lot of people. And if you shop Brown, he's 12-1. DraftKings estimate plus 850. FanDuel has Tatum minus 135, which to me is crazy that he's odds on. If
Yes.
you shop at DraftKings, he's plus 120. So, uh, you look for your guy and shop around. Obviously, if I had to, right now, just get a bet out of you, is anything bettable in this market?
I think so. I think there's a couple of things. And first off, for our audience too, it was Bob. What is Bob Myers was on the post game show, and he polled the crew. He was like, "Hey, who's your Finals MVP right now?" And he was setting up to a stupid point because he was like, "My MVP is Brad Stevens." But at the table, two of the three picked Jaylen Brown, and only Mike Wilbon picked Drew Holiday. So those aren't the voters, but it gives you an idea of just again the gravity of some of these star players. I think Drew Holiday should be in the lead right now. Holiday was quietly awesome in game one. You're talking about a stat sheet in game one of 12 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists on 4 of 9 shooting. He was very impactful and a team best plus 20. Then he follows that up with today, 26 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists. We all saw it. He was absolutely incredible throughout that entire game. The defense was awesome. Holiday should be your leader right now. So now the question is just, and I think this is what's interesting. If it's a short series and he gives you one more good game, and let's say, God forbid, they sweep, I think he's got a real legitimate shot to win this thing if you're looking at the nuance of what he's done. The problem is, can you trust the voters to do that? But I'll say this. There should not be a minus sign next to Jayson Tatum's name at all. He's played well in this series, and I'm not one of those he's played poorly. He's played very well. But in terms of impact, Drew Holiday and Jaylen Brown are ahead of him, I think, by about a full lap. And I would put my money on either of those two before I would go looking for Jayson Tatum at all.
I did all these shows, podcasts before the finals, and I said, Holiday could be a sneaker. Iguodala. Then it seemed like so many people were on it. I never got around to betting it. I said, he's probably not going to win. Do you have any tickets on this? Because I actually didn't bet it. I'm going to have to jump in at 12-1 or whatever, just for FOMO, if nothing else, because I'm just,
man. You know what's crazy? You know what he was after game one?
He had to have been, I don't know, 150-1.
Yeah, 120 is what I saw. Yeah.
Wow.
He was 120. Now he's 12-1. No, I didn't bet anything. I like to bet these, after these like first game, because you can probably find some spots like Jaylen Brown, for example, after the first game, you could have found him. Yeah, now, what I really loathe is I'm not in a market that has live finals MVP betting because there were some markets out there that were adjusting in the Eastern Conference Finals. You could have gotten Jaylen Brown like double digits in that final game of the Eastern Conference Finals. But no, I don't have anything at this point. But I think I'll come back in on Brown only because, while I believe Drew Holiday is the favorite, realistically convincing voters that he is going to get at least 5 of 9 votes, and a Jaylen Brown who's just statistically still performing at a pretty solid level and outshining that, I think is going to be hard for some of the, I will call them simpletons who vote for these awards, because generally they just look at the big name. Like, Will, I don't know how you felt. I thought it should have been 9-0 Jaylen Brown in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, I don't think that Tatum had a leg to stand on in terms of impact in that series when it came to the moments, and yet he barely won that thing 5-4.
We do have 2 days between all these games. I think it's Wednesday's game 3, and then only 1 day between 3 and 4. I don't know. So does that impact it where Holiday, the momentum can kind of build? Like, who should be on the radar here is Holiday. Maybe that builds in the next couple of days. I don't know. Maybe that's something to think about. Maybe, who knows?
I mean, it could. I mean, I just wonder. We were, if you remember, there was quite a few of us who were famously on Caleb Martin, right, to win Eastern Conference Finals MVP. And you even had, like, this is the stupid part about, kind of betting in these markets. You had Reggie Miller on the broadcast in game 7, call him the MVP, and then vote for Jimmy Butler. Yet Tim Bontemps in a podcast say that he would have voted for Caleb Martin. And then in game 7, he flipped his vote for no reason, even though Martin had a better statistical game than Butler. So handicapping where these voters are going to go is wild. So you could think that maybe the couple of days helps, but in the moment, they generally just revert back to, I know that name. I'm just going to go there.
I think there's 100% truth to that. That's always the example I point to. But if you remember, like, the climate of that point last year, Butler was so good against Milwaukee, then pretty good against the Knicks, that Butler had just banked so much equity in terms of like the media, where Tatum's not on that level. So maybe this is a little different, but it is fascinating. I do think the 12-1, if I could give you 12-1 on Holiday right now, you would bet it though.
Oh yeah, I think I would. Especially
Yeah.
as somebody who is very much in the mindset of this is going to be a short series, like four, maybe, or excuse me, five, maybe four games. Him having two very impactful games and having this massive game is very helpful. So if you're in my neck of the woods where you think that this is a short series that Boston kind of sweeps them away with ease, I think you're taking something on Holiday. If it extends out, then obviously the chances lessen for Drew.
Media seems to like him too. Good guy. He's won a championship. You know, he had all the stuff with his wife, so that
Well,
probably
you
helps too, right?
talk about narrative, right? I mean, think about the narrative around him too.
And
Bucks,
he's the difference.
no, we need
Yes.
to improve. We got to trade you away. You get shipped off to Portland. Portland then flips you to Boston. And now look at you. Here we are. Milwaukee went home in the first round. And here's Drew Holiday winning playoffs, the NBA Finals games for this team in June. Like that's, it's a pretty strong narrative that does work in his favor.
Plus the narrative, hey, Boston was a bunch of chokers. They got Holiday, who was a
Yep.
champion, and now they're champions. Yeah, so I completely agree. I don't anything else to add to this game, this series.
No, I just think that, one of the things that I would say after two games now, there is evidence. We were kind of sleeping on, as I put it in my preview on VSiN.com, Boston's dominance was really hiding in plain sight throughout this entire playoff run. You can talk about struggling with Indiana. Fact is, they went 4-0 in clutch games against the Pacers, and in those clutch minutes, absolutely dominated from a net rating standpoint. And one of their two losses in the postseason, their opponent, the Miami Heat, set a franchise record for made threes in a single game in the playoffs. So I think we were kind of sleeping on all of this. And by the way, they're still doing this. They won all of those games without Kristaps Porzingis, and they're winning these two games with Porzingis on a clear minutes restriction, and he might be a little beat up heading into game three. I think just as a collective, we kind of slept on how kick-ass Boston had been throughout this entire postseason run, regardless of opponent.
I agree with that, and I think it's forgivable for people to have slept on him because the opponents. I mean, it was just such a weak path to the finals. Reminds me a little bit of Michigan football, where all right, they're killing everybody, but the schedule's soft. Like it's just push and pull of like yes, but yeah, and like everybody's right. Yes, the schedule's tough, but yes, they're really good. It's hard to kind of balance all that out.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And that's why I like, you know me. It's why I do like to dive into some of these numbers, because if I just gave you the profile of Boston statistically heading into this series, you'd have been like, holy smokes, like they're awesome. Like they should, what do you mean they're only minus 210 heading into this series against the Dallas Mavericks? And you're talking to some smart folks and listening to them too, the number you kept hearing before game one was probably more like minus 400. And then here they are up 2-0 after a couple of strong wins.
I think a lot of that was people seeing a plus sign in front of Dallas. You got almost 2-1. You got the best player. And there was no sharp money on Boston because anybody who's even semi-sharp, it was clear weeks, if not months ago, Boston was going to be in the finals. So you were grabbing, minus 130, minus 150, minus 170. There was no reason to come back with Boston, even minus 220, even if it's discounted. The people who were paying attention, you already had Boston in your pocket. So there was no way to just kind of balance that action out.
Yeah, and other than just throw up a cheap price and just be willing to take all the money that you wanted on Dallas, right? Because you knew that they were going to come in droves and bet that thing. And so I think that's why you saw that price so cheap, because you were kind of, to your point, not in a position to be blasted by Boston backers at a cheap series price, because they were all at home, fat and happy, ready to go. And then the rest of everybody else just came in and started hounded away on 175.
Shitty playoffs, man. I was excited. I thought these were going to be balanced, competitive, good series, just kind of shitty playoffs.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think they've been okay. There hasn't been any big moments, and that's kind of been like disappointing. And there's just been weird series too. Like other than the last game in Dallas, Minnesota, like Dallas, Minnesota was like a weirdly competitive series. But then, but obviously the series ended quickly. Same thing with Boston and Indiana. Series ended quickly. And I think that kind of does help or does not help the overall thought of this. And the first game, of course, kind of a blowout, make it interesting in the third. So hopefully get some good ones out there in Dallas to end it off nicely.
Yeah, it's a good point. You never got both because Dallas, Minnesota, the games were competitive, but the series wasn't. Denver, Minnesota, the series was competitive, but none of the games were. So you never got a situation where, hey, the games are really good and the series is good. It's like one of them was a blowout. It's just really strange. And I don't know. I thought it was going to be balanced. I thought there was a lot of parity. And we just, I don't know, just never manifested. A lot of injuries and just didn't break that way for whatever reason.
Yeah, to me, by my knowledge, I think the best series for my money, like every single game, was OKC Dallas. That game, like that series, I think every game was relatively tight. They were competitive. It went to 6. They were fun. They had some good performances. And outside of that, you're thinking like, Clippers, Dallas was okay, but
Nick Sixers was good. Nick Sixers had its moments.
Yep. Then that was cool at the beginning, but some of these, it just they didn't really hold up as much as you expected. That Denver Minnesota series is a good shout because that was the weirdest series I've ever seen in my life.
That changed colors about 4 or 5 different
Yep.
times, sometimes within the same game. And I still think Denver's got to be sick to their stomach. I mean, it was a Sunday night. It probably had to be 4 weeks ago now. It was early May. I think it was I don't know. Yeah, we're talking 3 or 4 weeks ago. To be up 20 at home, and you look at what Dallas has done, and you just look at
Yep.
everything since, the way Minnesota couldn't compete against Dallas. Boy, Denver just has to be kind of sick to their stomach. Like, man, we should at least still be playing right now. Boston would have been a hell of a series. I don't know who would have won, but that would have been a great series.
Yes, it would have. And I agree with you completely. I mean, it's not even just a month ago when you're up 20. Go back 2 months ago now. You can't lose the San Antonio Spurs.
Right.
You can't do that. You're on the other side of the bracket. If that happens, everything completely changes. And maybe you're playing here. Maybe it's 1-1. Who the hell knows? But for sure, there's obviously a pretty strong chance you're sitting here in June and playing some basketball.
Couple quick ones before we go. These next year markets are going to open sooner rather than later. Some books already have them open.
Yes.
Anyone you're going to be looking to take a stab at it, like a long number, anticipating there's going to be a move coming?
100%. The top of the list is the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't know why you're looking at Memphis is in the range of I've seen about 45-1 to win the NBA Finals. This was not a team that failed this year. This is a team that was destroyed by injuries. This team is still one. Remember last time we saw them put together, they were the 2 seed, right? If I remember correctly, in the Western Conference. They're awesome. They're very good, and they're a very good defensive team. And I think a lot of it is forgotten because of the injuries. There was this weird movement that you wanted to fire Jenkins, even though he's one of the best head coaches. This team's going to be full. They're going to be healthy. They're going to be complete. They're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. I would definitely jump on the Memphis Grizzlies. Absolutely.
This time tomorrow, recording this 11 o'clock Sunday night East Coast. This time tomorrow, Hurley will either be the Lakers head coach or he will stay at UConn. Which one is it going to be?
I mean, I think if he was going to be the Lakers head coach, he'd be the Lakers head coach by now. Nothing's changing. The only thing that's changing is he took the deal back to UConn. He's like, what can you guys do for me? Because if they're throwing $100 million guaranteed at him, what's left to think about? The only thing left to think about is that you're taking this to see if you can get the money matched. So I think UConn's calling a bunch of people, getting the money together to keep him around. I think he's still going to be a head coach of the UConn Huskies.
It's kind of where I'm at. Thursday, I was very confident he was going to take the job. The only thing that makes me think maybe it's possible is like, hey, Saturday into Sunday, he decided to take it and they just told him, or maybe he decided, I don't want to upstage. I don't want to, overshadow game 2 of the finals. Let me wait till Monday to make my decision. I called it a total coin flip, maybe 55-45 he'd be with Lakers. I was extremely confident he would take the job a few days ago. Now I'm not so sure. I think it's a true coin flip. But what would you put as betting odds for it?
I think at this point right now, just given the fact that for me, the difference is that we've been waiting since the deal, the news has been there, right? So that the deal was $100 million guaranteed. So I'd make UConn like a short favorite. I'd say like -120 UConn is the spot that he ends up with. And I'll say this too, like I saw a lot of this conversation. I totally understand why he would do it outside of the money. I mean, to me, there's 2 outcomes, right? You go to the NBA and you become the longtime Lakers head coach because you have success and you're going to be awesome. Or you don't do well, you leave, and then you're like, oh, God, darn, I got to go be the head coach of Kentucky or something like that, right? Like every single college program is going to have their doors open whenever he wants to go back to college. So it's a win-win situation for him.
Yeah, it's the Saban situation where he goes back with any pick of his job he wants.
Yep.
Coaches will, our programs will shove their coach out of the way to get him. And look, once that $100 million is offered, that's real. That's in your bank account if you want it. It's real. It's guaranteed. And you almost have to give it back when you say no. So it'll be fascinating. I don't think he's a great fit in the pros. I just think his intensity, his pace, his style, all that stuff is just, I don't know that works in the NBA. And the coach, it matters, of course, in the NBA, but it's not like it matters in college where you're the star. You recruit the players, you coach them, you develop them, you attract them. I mean, the coach is the program in college. Coach is not an afterthought in the NBA, but if you don't have the stars in the NBA, it's just not the same thing.
Well, the problem with that is, because I agree to an extent, like you as a coach don't matter until April. Right. That's the problem is then we see your impact on the game is when coaches get out coached, you see it and you see it pretty quickly in a series. But I will say, I hope he takes a job only because to your point about his fit, I can't wait for like just January 11th.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a Wednesday, second leg of a back-to-back in Charlotte. And this team's just grinding through an East Coast trip. And there's Hurley on the sideline just screaming and trying to get his guys to play with some pace. It's the third game in 4 nights. LeBron just wants to sit down. I can't wait. It would be great.
It would be a very awkward fit. It really would be. JVT, appreciate some time here. Let everyone know where they can catch you.
VSiN Primetime, I'll do Eastern, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And VSiN.com got plenty of write-ups, NBA, MLB, and working on the NFL guide as well, which will be out later this month. How about that?
You and Tim Murray stole Dave Ross and I's pick. Dave Ross and I locked it in at plus 290. We both had the Astros for that VSiN contest we're doing. I guess you guys did it a couple days at plus 320. You did it a couple days later. So we had to sell our pick. We had to take the loss to give away the $100 in our little futures contest because you guys got a better number a couple days later.
Well, that's revenge for making us. I think we were like the third lowest odds to win the competition. So I saw that and I was like, we need vengeance. We need to force them to sell their pick. Yep, that's exactly what it was.
JVT, appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, man.
All right, that will do it. Thank you to Jonathan Von Tobel. We will be back Wednesday, break down more of the finals, maybe look ahead to the College World Series, do some other things. So rate, review, subscribe. See you guys Wednesday.